What's going on, Chess YouTube? In today's video, we're looking at the game where Magnus Carlsen destroys Alexandra Botez in just 10 seconds. Okay, in the game, Magnus Carlsen opens 1d4, and Alexandra Botez responds 1g6, the modern defense. Of course, her idea is to go bishop g7 next, try to exert pressure on this long diagonal. Now here, Magnus goes for a very simple plan, knight f3, then e4, and finally the move bishop c4. This is a very common weapon against the modern defense. And White's idea is simple. He wants to go queen e2, short castles, and maybe c3 with a very easy game. Now here, Alexandra goes knight to f6, setting up short castles on the king side, and here Magnus goes queen to e2, setting up various e5 ideas. Now here, Alexandra, she should probably think about going either short castles or knight to c6, putting pressure on White's center. Instead, she goes for the move e6, and this move is very, very passive. I mean, it is just begging for White to break in the center with the move e5, and that is exactly what Magnus Carlsen does here. Now Alexandra, she takes on e5, Magnus takes back with the pawn, and now the knight is forced to jump forward to the d5 square, knight d5 on the board. However, the problem with this move is it opens up this diagonal to the queen. Bishop g5 is now a threat. Magnus Carlsen spots it. He goes bishop g5. And already, Black has a very difficult choice here. In the game, she goes queen d7. However, here, Magnus, knight c3. He is not slowing down. His idea is to go rook to d1 next, putting pressure on that queen on the d7 square. Now, Alexandra, what is she supposed to do? Well, one idea is taking on c3, but then after b takes c3, Magnus is going to set up rook d1 next. That's going to be very dangerous. So instead, she goes c6, but this turns out to be a very big mistake. Here, Magnus goes rook to d1, all the same, hitting that knight on d5 to the queen, and Black castles, but then Magnus Carlsen starts the kingside attack with the move h4. Of course, here, White's idea is to go h5, then h takes g6, opening up the h-file for the rook. So with that in mind, here is Alexandra. She stops the attack with the move h5. But this turns out to be a very big mistake. Instead, she actually needed to allow h5 from Magnus. The move is queen c7, freeing up the d7 square for the knight. Then after h5, she goes knight d7. This would be the best defense, trying to bring more pieces into the defense of the king. However, instead, h5 on the board from Alexandra, and this move has an obvious flaw. Here, Magnus exploits it with the move g4. Of course, now Magnus is going to open up all sorts of files against Alexandra's king on the g8 square. Here, as she goes h takes g4, then Magnus simply goes knight to h2. That pawn on g4 is doomed, and Magnus still has h5 ideas up his sleeve. So with that in mind, Alexandra instead takes the knight on the c3 square. Knight takes c3 played in the game. And here, obviously, that does open up the attack of the rook on the queen. However, the knight on c3 is attacking Magnus Carlsen's queen. If White takes the queen, Black's going to capture the queen in return. So with that in mind, b takes c3 played, and now Magnus still has that attack on the queen on d7. Here, Alexandra goes queen to c7, good move, but here Magnus opens up the g-file. G takes h5, then g takes h5 back, and finally rook g1 from Magnus, simply lining up the rook with the king on the g8 square. And now, of course, bishop f6 is threatened in the game. This is not good. What is Alexandra supposed to do here? Well, she counterattacks on the queen side with the move b5, but this turns out to be a fatal mistake. Here, Magnus simply responds bishop f6, his 16th move in less than 10 seconds, and in this position, Alexandra Botez resigns on the spot to Magnus Carlsen. And here's why. If Alexandra captures the bishop on the c4 square, Magnus simply takes on g7, then he has a forced checkmate. Here's how it goes. He draws back the rook, rook g5, king a7, then queen to e4, activating the queen. Then finally, after king to h6, the checkmate move is bishop g7 check. The bishop on g7 delivers the checkmate to the king, and that is all she wrote. Wow, what a game by Magnus Carlsen. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and smash that like button and check out my Magnus Carlsen playlist, and I'll see you in the next video.